Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love.
Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions, and I'm doing a lot of exploring this week. I am in Orlando, Florida at what I think is the largest podcasters convention on earth. About 2,000 podcasters here. We're doing some great stuff. We're learning, hearing some great speakers. My own producer, Abby Graves, is one of the speakers that is here doing great work. I'm so lucky to have Abby working with me, and she's sharing her wisdom with all the podcasters here. Really just some great speakers, some great information. And I have been inspired while I'm here to really launch into something I've thought about for a long time. If you follow the show, you know that I have had a monologue podcast for a little over a year now. And I know there are a lot of people out there with great stories, with great wisdom, with real insights, and I could be bringing them on the show. And so I've thought about doing some interviews for a while now, and I have been inspired to finally make that leap and to do that here at PodFest. And my very first guest is Dr. Liz Fiedler Mergen, and it's very appropriate that Liz is my first guest on the show, my very first interview ever, because in some ways, Liz is responsible for what the Learning Love podcast has become, because I met Liz last year at PodFest, and she introduced me to my producer, Abby Graves. She made that introduction. Abby became the producer of the Learning Love podcast shortly after, and the rest is history in the making. I owe Liz a lot because she made that introduction last year, and I have appreciated that so much. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And Abby and I are looking at each other. She's right behind the camera, and we're laughing because I've been on a couple of her other podcasts, and both of them have said the same thing. I'm like, oh, am I to blame or to thank? I don't know, but I believe in podcasting so much that we met last year at PodFest. We were both sitting in the author's track, kind of, not really looking at each other. And you can tell who's been here before and who is brand new at PodFest. Just look lonely, look scared, look like you don't know what's going on, and someone will find you. And we found each other, and I'm like, do you know what you're doing? And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, let's just follow each other. And we became friends. And then we got talking, and, you talked about your message and your story and your book. You were saying, I'm trying to figure out how to start a podcast.
Yep.
And I said, you don't need to figure out how. You just need to find someone who can help you with it. And I have the person.
And you did, and it has really just transformed everything. When I was trying to do this on my own, it was so much work. It was taking me hours to get just even an amateur broadcast up. And now I have a professional podcast with a real producer, and it's just been
life-changing. It sounds crazy. This is not supposed to be an ad for the Abby Graves production.
But hey,
you will not meet her two bigger fans in the world.
That's exactly right. If you are looking for a producer, go to Abby Graves Production.
AbbyGravesProductions.com. Okay, let's get into the podcast. But
now let's talk about Liz. Dr. Liz, tell us, I know you do a lot of things. So just give us the rundown of who you are, what you do.
Yeah, Dr. Liz Fiedler Mergen. I am a nurse practitioner. I have my doctorate degree in nursing, family nurse practitioner, but I only do that one day a week now. I do video visits from home, virtually, treating a lot of pink eye and backaches and writing notes for work. And I do believe that I'm helping those people. I say it kind of tongue in cheek. It's a way for me to continue to chase my other dreams, because what happened to me or in my life or whatever, I still don't know how to describe the event that changed everything. But I was working full-time as a nurse practitioner in 2020, only for about a year. I was in grad school. I did a 6-year graduate program for my doctorate, and then graduated end of 2019, started my first job, pandemic hit. So I was really only a full-time nurse practitioner for 4 months. And then the pandemic hit. And I was building this panel of patients, and I was in primary care, and I was the last provider to join our group. And so I saw one patient a day for about 3 months straight, because elective surgeries and physicals and anything that could be pushed off were, especially in states like Minnesota where we live that had pretty strict lockdowns. And so then I worked full time up until that point, and then it was kind of this slow thing, and we were starting to get busier at work. And then that summer, Josh and I had started a little farm stand at the end of our driveway, and it really was meant to be sharing flowers with people that were isolated, and it was buy one, give one. And so for every bouquet you bought, you gave a second one. We donated a second one to a nursing home.
Oh,
and,
nice.
On paper, on numbers, you can Google, what does a full-time nurse practitioner make, right? I'm not going to make, selling bouquets for $7 a piece. This wasn't going to be a thing, right? It just was a nice little fun side thing. And my husband worked in lending. He was a vice president of a bank. He didn't like to call it a bank. A full-service lender is what we'll call it. We had our first daughter. She turned 3. And then on December 9th, 2020, he died of a heart attack.
Wow.
That was on a Wednesday. That Monday was his funeral. And then that Tuesday, I found out I was pregnant with our second child. Floundered for a couple of years, trying to figure out what I should do, just trying to survive. My sister moved in with me. Our daughter was born. I kept doing the flowers. I say sort of because really it was my customers that ran my business for me, which sounds so crazy, but they came over, they volunteered, they picked flowers. They wouldn't let me quit. They're like, no, I have some people that paid full price for their flowers that they basically planted, picked, whatever, and they're like, no, we're just going to help you keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it just continued to grow, and obviously that survival stage quit. And 5 years later, I am now remarried to a wonderful man named Brent. My daughters are 4 and 8, and my flower farm has blossomed.
Nice.
Into we built an event venue, so we host wedding showers, not weddings, but we do showers and rehearsal dinners and baby showers and birthday parties, just all those in-between things that I think is really just shaped by my experience of losing my husband and honoring him. And it was his family farm that we live on, and it was this place that I was really angry, to be honest, that I felt stuck there. I felt like, great, now I'm trapped. My parents lived 3 hours away, but I'm like, I can't sell this place. This is where he grew up. And so it was just this journey of trying to rebuild a life that I would still be happy in, and just seeking out that joy. And I'm remarried now to Brent, who was friends with my husband. He was a huge part of it. I could not have done it without him. And I, as a strong, independent woman, I want to pretend like, oh, this is me. But no, he was my partner in it. It took both of us, our talents and skills. And I have a book coming out about the whole thing. And yeah that's what I do. And I have a podcast, and it's turned into teaching other flower farmers, other businesses. My podcast used to be called Flower Farmer Forum. Now it's Rooted Agritourism, basically teaching people or shining a light on the stories of people that are doing things differently in agriculture, growing things that aren't corn and soybeans and those traditional crops, because flowers or specialty crops, that type of thing.
Yeah, that is a lot.
It's a lot.
That is a lot, and you articulate it very well in a concise way.
What's funny is I went through this phase where, because I built the business, this time last year when I was at PodFest, the very first speaker I heard was Nick, who's the CEO of PodFest. Mm-hmm. And he stood up there and he said, do you know why most people don't finish their book? And at that time, I had about 180 pages of random thoughts and random things, and what helped me, what didn't in my grieving. And I was trying to turn the book into a self-help book, because at first it was going to be a memoir, because the whole husband dies, pregnant, like it's trauma for trauma's sake. For the first couple years, there wasn't really a lesson. It was just, that was the story. And so thinking that was going to be the memoir of this, I'm like, well, I don't want to write a memoir. I just didn't want to write about that. And I didn't want that to be my story. And so then I tried turning it into self-help. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. It sounds weird, but I kept reading it and kept thinking, how do I teach people? And I kept thinking the tagline, it was going to be bloom and grow, how to be less angry in your grief. Anger is a normal stage of grief.
It is absolutely normal and part of it.
But not everyone, I lived 90% of my grief was anger, still is anger, but that's not for everyone.
It's not, and it's perfectly normal that you would be angry, because we have this idea of what is supposed to be. And I put that in air quotes. This is supposed to. You're young, you are married, you have a daughter, you don't know it yet, but you're about to have a second child. Everything is unfolding the way it's supposed to. You have a business, you're successful academically, you have a good job.
I did everything right.
You did everything right. That's exactly right. You do everything right. It's supposed to work out right, and that's not what life is. That's not how life works. In my book, I talk about the first component of love is grief, because life is going to hurt. And we know that intellectually, but emotionally, that is hard to accept. And we just want life to work as we imagine it will. And it's stories like yours that remind us it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to.
Exactly.
And anger is part of that. It's part of the process we have to go through.
So I was trying to teach people how to get through their grief or something, and I just realized it just didn't feel right. By the time we got to PodFest, I wasn't even going to print the book. I wasn't even going to publish it. I had told my Abby that I came down here with, she's like, just go to this author track. Just go to this author track. I'm like, okay, fine. And the first thing he said is, people are writing the wrong book. And I realized, I'm like, yeah, this is not a self-help book. It's a memoir with lessons in self-help and a lot of examples of the grief and things people said and did, but how they would do it differently. But what I love about how it's turned out is I did it over 5 years. So there's sections. It's 2020, 2021, 2022. And when you read it, some of it is not flattering for me. I mean, I was angry. I changed a lot of details so that people aren't mad. But I think my feelings were valid at the time of something that someone said that upset me. But reflecting on it, you can tell, okay, if that exact same thing happened now, I would definitely look at it with this different lens. But that doesn't mean, I just think we can all learn so much from it. And it's not airing dirty laundry. It's not, any of that. But it's these things that seemed like a mountain at the time. And now I read it and I'm like, I don't even, and I'll say that of note, as I write this paragraph is 3 years later. Whoa.
Yeah,
Liz,
well, people
calm
don't
down.
know what to say because, as I said, we are so locked into what's supposed to be, and when it's just something just so defiant of what we wish life could be and what it should be and what we expect it to be, people don't know what to say. And people will say, in every meaning well, with all love, they will say the most horrible things. And they don't mean to. They are trying to help, but they are not. I always say the best thing you can say to people is, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Just, if you know someone that has a terrible time of grief, just say I'm sorry or say nothing and just be there, or do what your customers did for you.
Yes.
Those practical things, you don't have to say anything. You're not going to make things better with words. But doing those practical things, when they came and helped you with your flowers, came and paid full price for things that they had actually helped grow. I love that. Those are the kinds of things that help with grief.
One of the chapters that I am most proud of, and it's a lot of chapters, there's about 90 chapters, but some of them are only a page, some of them are longer, but I talk about the platinum rule. Do you know what the platinum rule is?
I do not.
Oh,
Tell me.
I'm going to teach you.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if it's a real thing, I read it somewhere at some point, but the golden rule is do unto others as you want others to do to you.
Right.
But the platinum rule is do unto others what they want. And so, people kept, for me, the first couple months, people just kept showing up with coffee and just wanting to talk. I got laundry to do. I have.
You have a 3-year-old.
I'm a chit chatter. I'm a chit chatter. I love to chit chat, but not when I have things to do.
Right.
It makes them feel better, like they're doing something. Another example that I used in the book is one of my best friends during this whole thing went through leukemia, and she was hospitalized for 6 weeks and blood transfusions every day and all of these things. And because people knew that we were so close, they repeatedly reached out to me and said, what can we do? What does she want? Can we start a meal train? Can we do something? Well, her husband, I love him. He was my late husband's best friend, my daughter's godfather. He is a routine man, packs his lunch every day. I'm like, he doesn't want weird, and she's not home, and that's not helpful. And I said, what she wants is she wants people to donate blood. That's what she's asking. And people are like, well, can I just give $50? Can I just, I'm like, no, she wants you to do, you asked.
Yeah.
You asked. And I'm telling you what she's asking for. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
how about, they're whipping out their wallets instead. I'm like, well, whatever. But when you're doing something, when someone's grieving, when someone's, going through a loss, ask yourself, is this actually going to make them feel better, or is this going to make myself feel better so I can check a box and say, well, I reached out. Are you doing it to make them feel better, or are you doing it to make yourself feel better?
Yeah, because we all do hurt when somebody else is hurting. People we care about, our friends, our family, we hurt for them, and we want to make it better. And you just can't make it better sometimes.
And the other thing that I can reflect on now is some of the things that people were doing, his friends or whatever, his coworkers that I just didn't know that well, and they wanted to come over for coffee. And I tried really hard to change so many details so no one's like, oh crap, that was me she was talking about. But they're grieving too.
They are.
And yeah, and on a scale of who's grieving more, obviously it's me. I'm his wife.
Right.
I'm pregnant with his child. But they're grieving too. And I had a hard time recognizing that.
Right.
That just let them help you. That was something that I feel like I did what I had to do, but I wish I had been strong enough to, and I don't even know what the word is, but I wish.
It's complex.
It's so complex.
It's just
I
a
look back
complex
now,
time.
I'm like, they were grieving. Like, I should have let them help me more in ways that even though it's not what I wanted, they were grieving too. They lost a friend, a cousin, a whatever, but I didn't necessarily, and there were so many people because of the circumstances of our relationship. I was 22, he was 30 when we met. Most of his friends were already married, having kids, and then I started grad school right away, and so they were like coming out of the terror, or well, I'll say the terrors of, like their kids were finally like 5 out of diapers.
There's a bit of terror to
so
that,
they were ready to start hanging out again and coming out of the, their crazy stage, but then we were just in it, so then we're busy. And so a lot of his best friends, and I use that with air quotes, but some of his closest friends at one stage of his life, I'm like, I didn't even know you. Like, there were literally people that wrote a letter to me and they're like, Liz, I am so embarrassed that you don't know me. Yeah. And that, I hope, and Josh maybe brought them up at some point. That doesn't mean that they weren't close to him at one point. I have a lot of friends that if something happened to them right now, I haven't spoken to them in a decade, but I think of them fondly, and I probably would reach out to their husband, but then what am I doing? I don't know. So complex.
And we do have to be patient with each other, and we do have to accommodate one another and understand that everybody's trying to help. But it is such a complex thing in those tragedies. We have this idea of what it's supposed to be, that when someone dies late in life, they're up in their 90s, that's a different thing. But when you have a tragic death of a younger person, people just don't know what to say or how to handle that.
Correct.
But let me ask you about, you're remarried.
Yes.
And how did that, you were friends already, friends with your husband. How has he adjusted to this with the book and to your life of talking about that experience and how much you adored your husband that passed away? And of course, you adore your husband now.
Yes.
Love is big.
Yes.
You can love a lot of people in life, but what is it like for him as you're telling your story?
I think that especially early on, I looked for reasons. This is going to sound so weird, but I looked for imperfections in my marriage. When I went and got credit card statements or something, this is going to sound so weird, but I wanted to find out that we were 70 grand in debt or something just so I could be mad at him because for dying. And that's so crazy. But I would make up scenarios or I would think back on things. And Brent, in the early days of us dating, he stood up for Josh. He kept me rational, and he was my sounding board. And he's like, Liz, that's not what happened. Yeah. Like, and there'd be things that I would say or, with going back to grad school, I'd be like, well, Josh never let me do that. And he's like, I don't remember it that way. But, he was like defending him. Yeah. And I can't thank him. Sorry, I'm going to cry. But like, okay. I think that's how I realized that he was going to that role in, and so I think what really upsets me in some ways is there are people who, Brent, I don't know, was chasing life insurance or something like that, and just so rude. So,
terrible.
It's like,
that's a terrible thing to say.
It's terrible things for people to say. And, it's just things like that where, no, like you have no idea what that man has done. And he really helped out with that. But then now I would say with the book, if I'm being honest, he's ready for it to we talked about it this morning as he was dropping me off. And because I did have someone come up to me last night and they also have a book coming out and they're like, my family's so sick of it and sick of me talking about it. And I told him that, and he's like, no, I get it. He's like, I get that this is the time. You got to talk about your book, or no one's going to know that you have a book, and they're not going to buy your book, and the message is not going to reach people, and blah, 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 blah. But just trying to be very present and very aware during that time. But I think that he's gotten more open to sharing his story, but in his eyes, it's just life. It's just what happened. He doesn't think that he was overly spectacular. He's like,
well, that's what good people do, just themselves, and they do good things. They're not
Exactly.
trying. And I want to pick up on something you said about being angry with your husband for dying. That is something I've heard so many times over the years, and people feel guilty for that.
He died of
but
a
that
heart
is
attack,
so
and he was
normal.
And he was.
I mean, who are you going to blame? You're going to blame.
He ran 6 days a week. He didn't smoke. He didn't He was not this walking risk factor or like.
When you're angry, and that's normal with grief, you want to blame something or somebody. You can blame the person that died. You can blame God. You can blame life. You can blame the universe. Whatever your belief system is, you're going to blame somebody. That's just normal. And then people feel so guilty about it. And I always want to let people off the hook on that one. That's going to happen. And it's okay. You work your way through that. But it is great to hear that you have someone that has supported you through all that and defended your husband that died. And that is such an asset to have. One of the things that I've said many times is that some things are just so painful, they leave a hole in your heart.
Yep.
But you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And I think you're an example of that. That experience of losing your husband in such a tragic way with small children, or a small child and being pregnant, that hole in your heart, that emotional scar is not going to go away. You're going to have that element forever, but you're showing you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And that's what I hope folks will always see, that you can rebuild, that grief is a pathway to healing. It's not something to avoid. That anger, the depression, the frustration, all those things is not anything to run from. It's a healer, even though it's terribly painful. Grief is a healer that brings you to a better place. And I think, telling your story, writing your book, building that second marriage. And I'm also curious, I've been a stepfather, am a stepfather. The boys are grown now, but what's it like having that experience with step-parenting?
We kind of made the decision early on. Davey, who was born, he's the only dad that she knows, but she is asking so many questions about Josh now, obviously. She's 4. What's heaven like? What's this? What's that? And she will cry. And she's like, I miss him. I want to meet him. She's mad that she doesn't have any pictures with him where Vidalia does.
Right.
All of these things. Vidalia, she doesn't remember him, obviously. She was 3 for a while.
Right.
I thought she would, but then she's talking about the things that we've told her or the stories or whatever. I would say the first... Maybe when she turned about 5, she started calling him dad just naturally. Davey always called him dad. Vi started doing it, and now it's dad and my dad. But they'll tell people, Davey's 4, and we'll be somewhere, and she'll be like, did you know my other dad died? And I'm like, okay.
That's the great thing about kids. They're just honest.
Well, my favorite, so Josh and I met at a restaurant. It's called Howie's Bar and Grill, and you can imagine what it's like. It's just, I adore it. And so we always go there around his birthday or around the anniversary of his death, and we sit at the same table that we met at, and if it's open. And this year, in December, she looks at the waitress and she goes, did you know my dad died at this table? And I'm like, no, he did not. He did not. But, I think what Brent and I decided, because the age that the girls were, we're like, okay, there's got to be 3 of us in this relationship. We have to think about what Josh would want. But he was very open. We talked about it, and he's like, from this young of an age, he would have respected whatever I wanted, whatever I needed, whatever. But he's like, it's going to be really hard for me to parent them at arm's reach. And the thing is, he kept saying, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, well, I've never parented anyone over 3 years old either. I don't know what I'm doing
Everybody's
either.
just winging it.
And so I would say, he's dad, not just stepdad. And he's financially decisions, whatever. He's flying alone with them today. He takes them camping. He's, and that's what worked for us and the ages that they were. I definitely think it would have been harder if they were older or, those dynamics. But I think it also works because his parents are incredibly respectful of the relationship that I had with Josh.
That's good.
And immediately the first thing they asked when they met Davey, who's an infant, they're like, does she look like Josh? Those things, just bringing him up and talking about it. And, respecting it. Josh's mom had passed away before I met him, and he didn't have a particularly close relationship with his dad ever, and the relationship ended 3 years before he died. They hadn't spoken. And so it's not this, angry thing that is held on to, but we don't have a relationship with him, and we haven't. So I'm not saying that makes it easier, and I'm not saying that that's great, and it's sad. That's another thing that we've had to heal through and had to work on. And Josh did a lot of directing and navigating how he wanted to show up in the world as a father because of relationships that he had, and it's never as simple as, it's never the first choice, it's always the last resort, boundaries or things like that. But I think that definitely plays a dynamic in that, being so close to Brent's family, if we were navigating that as well.
Well, what I love about what you're saying there is you have strategy, that you're talking about it. And when you're going through grief, when you're going through transitions in life, you need to talk through these things. Don't just wing it. You talk it out, and talk to therapists, talk to each other, talk to friends that have been through things, but don't just make stuff up as you go. You have a strategy to navigate these things.
Exactly. We tried to talk about, here's the options, here's how we can approach this, here's how we can, and then maybe we pivot, maybe we change, maybe we definitely did not want to, they're my kids and you get to, it's because I also wanted a partner. I also wanted a teammate.
Of course. So tell me the name of the book.
Flowers Bloom Anyway, Rebuilding a Life You Didn't Choose.
Available wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold.
From Morgan James Publishing.
By Morgan James Publishing.
Who is also the publisher of my books. We love Morgan James Publishing around here.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being my very first guest on the Learning Love podcast. It's so much fun. I appreciate you so much. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
And as we sign off today, I want to reemphasize, life is painful. Life hurts. There are going to be things that leave emotional scars. They leave a hole in your heart, but you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And there's people like Liz that inspire us to that and teach us that. There's so many stories out there. Find them, be inspired, and find your way through grief in order to live that life, because we are not going to escape pain, but we can live a good life anyway, and that's what we're looking for. I want to thank all of you for listening. As always, thank you to my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Productions. Thank you to Dr. Liz for being here as my very first guest. And of course, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation. You can find out more at learninglovefoundation.com. Once again, thank you for listening, and love well, everyone.